everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the All Things International podcast. Today, I am here joined by Dr. Marisol Perez. Let's give her a warm round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Perez, so much for meeting me today. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted when you extended this invitation to me. So thank you.
Of course, we're so excited to have you. So, let's give a little bit of a background to our viewers and start at the beginning of things. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from, and what first inspired you to pursue psychology and later leadership in higher education?
Okay. Where I was from? Well, I grew up in South Florida, and my undergraduate I attended at University of Miami in Miami,
Mm.
Florida, and I got a bachelor's in science there. I was a double major, psychology and biology.
Oh, wow.
And then I went on and was admitted straight into a doctoral program at Florida State University and in clinical psychology. And so I got my PhD in clinical psychology. I did some people call it internship, some people call it residency in New Orleans at the Louisiana State University Consortium there. And then I then got my first job as an assistant professor at Texas A&M University. And I was at Texas A&M University in the Department of Psychology for 9 years. I got tenure there. I was an associate professor. And then I moved to Arizona State University into their Department of Psychology there. I was faculty of both in the clinical and developmental areas. And there I was an associate professor and then I full professor. And then I started to take on leadership roles while I was there. And I was there for 13 years until I came here to ODU.
Oh my goodness, you have been all around. You definitely seem to have shifted more to the west and more to the west. That's so crazy.
For a period of time, right? I was going west and then now I'm back east. Yeah. Yeah. And it's lovely to be closer to family and closer to home. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. I would love to build off of that a little bit too, and speak about your cultural background. So,
Mhm.
how has your cultural background shaped your career and the way that you approach your work in higher education?
That's an excellent question. So, my cultural background, I come from a Cuban American family. I'm a first generation college student.
Hmm.
And so that really did shape things. I had to figure everything out at every level.
Right.
And even just basics about dorm room and what does that mean, and how things worked at a university.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that has definitely shaped, especially my policy making and idea about services that we want to offer in the future in terms of, assessing people's gaps of knowledge about the system and the higher education system. And then how do we address it? How do we meet their needs when they need it? When they need to learn that important step or whatever it is. I think the other area is by being in different institutions. Every institution has their own culture and a student makeup is
Mm-hmm.
different as well. And so it's also just made me appreciate just how much, diversity and diversity in the broad sense, age and religion and race and ethnicity, gender and sexual orientation, all that really is part of the learning in a university setting. And so there's so much, not just academic, but social learning that builds into skills that make us more effective in our careers. And so thinking about that, thinking about the non-explicit curriculum and how do we develop that on a campus is also part of how my background and my cultural background and the different experiences up to this point really helped me to think about how do I best serve students.
So it sounds like your personal experiences have played a big role in your leadership journey. As you stated, you've held leadership positions at both Texas A&M and ASU, now ODU. How has your personal and professional background influenced your leadership style?
It's heavily influenced. And so I'm Hispanic,
Hmm.
and in my family, we grew up collectivistic.
Mm.
And so, what that means is that we rely on each other as part of our success. And you don't do things and you don't have to figure things out alone. And that's a very effective strategy for problem solving and for moving things forward. And sometimes it's, in solving problems, it's the who's. And so I think that approach and that background has definitely influenced my leadership style. I tend to be more collaborative, collectivistic. In terms of my leadership style, I view a university and all the individuals that make up the university as kind of a nomological network, a network of nodes and lines that are all connected. And my job is to strengthen those lines. And the stronger those lines are, the more effective we are at serving students and at advancing the university mission. That also means for strategies that I'm telling everybody about the things I'm working on, what I'm trying to solve, these big problems, and literally everybody, because you never know who might have a good idea or a random idea that leads to a good idea. But it also simultaneously serves to educate people on, on the things that we do, because the graduate school is supposed to be an invisible force.
Mm-hmm.
It works under, almost like soil.
Mm-hmm.
It works under, it holds plants up, and it does a lot, to support the plant, right? But you really don't spend much time thinking about the soil. You spend a lot of time thinking about the plant, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I view us. And so, but then I have to talk to people about the soil. So they go and they recognize and they think about, what it is we do and things like that. And I do have an interesting story that actually has shaped this and has shaped my approach to solving problems as a leader. It was when I was an undergrad, I was taking physics,
Mm-hmm.
came in with all of these credits, and I was told, oh, if you just take one more class in physics, you actually have a physics minor. And so I was like, okay. And when I took this physics class, I was struggling. I was a good student, and this was just a new experience for me, and I didn't know what to do about it. My grandmother, now my grandmother comes from a different country, and to our best guess in translating, had a fourth grade education,
Mm-hmm.
fifth grade equivalent to the US education.
Gotcha.
She does not know what physics is. She does not know, she still never understood what I do, or how things work, right? But I was one day talking to her on the phone, and I am just venting and frustrating and just letting her know, like, I don't know what to do. This is so stressful, right? So my grandmother, who doesn't understand a lick of anything that related to this,
Uh-huh.
calls me up in 2 hours and says, all right, listen, the son of the neighbor of your great aunt took physics in college, and he's willing to help. Here's his name, here's his number, but contact him right away and don't make me look bad. And he did. I
Oh
just,
my gosh.
he tutored me, helped me, and I did well in that class.
Wow.
And so that story sits in the front of my mind so much, just because it really goes to show, right? Like, and that's part of how my family has thrived and been successful, right? You don't have to do it alone. You have a lot of people surrounding you. They don't have to understand what you do. They don't have to get it, but they can be helpful to you. And so, yeah, so isn't that a great story? I just love that story.
That
um,
is so inspiring. I loved listening to that.
and that has formed like the foundation of my leadership style.
Wow. That is wonderful. I also like the way that you kind of discussed the college having different nodes. Like, that's such a beautiful way to think about things. Everybody is interconnected. I absolutely love that. So, speaking more about your leadership, your personal growth, growing up and moving through your academic path, were there any pivotal moments that really shaped your passion for addressing specifically health disparities and body image issues? Because I know that you've done a little bit of research doing those.
When I was in University of Miami, I was a dance instructor, and
Mm,
I at the amateur level competed to supplement my income to kind of help, pay for myself and my living expenses. And in that time, I was exposed to a lot of women predominantly who were Hispanic and who had eating disorders.
Hmm.
or they were, Hispanic slash Afro-Cuban, or, just, but they were by US standards, minoritized individuals. And then when I entered the PhD program, there was this disconnect. And at the time, there was this perception that minority individuals did not get eating disorders. And I remember my first time pitching an idea to I was a first semester, first year doctoral student, pitching my study idea to my peers and the instructor in the class. And my peers saying, "Why are you going to study that? They don't get eating disorders." And I remember what came out of my mouth at that time was, well, I didn't know that melanin, the skin pigmentation, had protective and curative properties towards mental health, right? And
Yeah.
and so that, that really did help to shape about, oh, we have to do a lot of work about how our diagnoses and even how we view psychiatric disorders is
Hmm.
shaped by one group and not others, and that presentation can look very different depending on who is in the room. And also pushing the field that identity is really a complex, dynamic thing that can change moment to moment depending on who else is in that room and what's most adaptive in that situation. And so thinking about for a client who's in for therapy, and wanting mental health treatment, what's going to be most adaptive to them in that moment, and how does that then influence their responses, and then our diagnoses and et cetera. And that's really been my career, is really thinking about the experience of minorities and getting their voice represented in the literature, getting their clinical symptoms represented in the literature, and so that we can better assess them, better treat them, better meet their needs. And also, and then down the path, like over time, this idea of wanting to help others, it really was connected to going into administration.
Hmm.
So when I started, it was the therapy, which is really one-on-one or maybe a small group with one therapist.
Hmm.
And then my research moved into, okay, if we really want to make it bigger impact, let's talk about prevention. And if we can keep people on healthy pathways, that's more effective, more impactful, and more cost effective than waiting till they get to the point of needing treatment. And in clinical psychology, we have this conundrum where even if we doubled the number of psychologists in the United States and the world, we could still not address the burden of mental health the population is experiencing. And
Yeah.
so prevention can really help in building a healthier and happier society. And so I moved into prevention. And how do we develop prevention programs that really keep kids, youth, in a healthy path? And then how do we develop prevention programs that can shift adults into more healthier paths? And then simultaneously, my administrative work was the same. Well, as a professor, I'm influencing students in my class and the
Hmm.
students that are in my lab. But as an administrator, I can do so much more. I can impact so much more and more individuals, and meet their needs, at a systemic level, or
True.
reduce barriers to allow more people to enter into, our college campuses. And so yeah, so I think those are, I've kind of, that's how like my trajectory of research, but also how that's been mirrored by my trajectory in leadership.
All right, so let's go on and move into the next part. I do want to hear a little bit more about your major initiatives, though, like your body project initiative, the Confident Meek lesson extension with the Dove Self-Esteem Project, and maybe if you want to share a moment or a response from students that have showed you the impact of this work that you've done.
Yeah. So this line of work it's been not, it's a passion project. It's a great research project. And it's just the gift that always kept giving.
Mm.
The body project, when I would implement in a college campus, is really this program that was developed with undergraduate students for undergraduate students.
Oh.
It is delivered by undergraduate students. And I'll talk about that part because the intervention itself is really wonderful. The body project is really only 4 hours,
Hmm.
two 2-hour sessions, 4 1-hour sessions, one, power 4 hours, however the person wants to develop it. But and it really focuses on, as individuals in this society, we are constantly pressured to look a certain way, to buy certain products, and that impacts us. And that
Mm-hmm.
has costs to us. But the underwritten message behind that is that we are not good enough and we are never good enough.
Yeah.
And a great example is if you're born with brown or black skin, you are trying to become whiter. But if you're
Right.
born with white skin, you're tanning to become darker, right?
Right.
That's a great example. Like no matter what you are, the goal is that you have to change, right?
Yeah.
And then that leads to a lot of costs to the self-esteem, to our comfort within our own bodies, to our self-respect, and also financial costs, the amount of money we spend, and the amount of time and mental energy we spend on something that doesn't benefit us
Mm-hmm.
in a meaningful, substantial way.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Body Project really addresses this and takes wherever people are at and say, in what way do these pressures impact you? And it's not just society, it's your peers and maybe your family, it's comments, it's social media, right? How are you, what are the messages that you are feeling? Kind of and what happens is a lot of time through these group discussions, they really realize how much they have acclimated to. And it's like now noise, but it's still negatively impacting them. And
Mm-hmm.
then we talk about what are some ways we can actively counter those pressures. And the idea is more agency. If you are aware and conscious of this, then you're not making decisions to conform to something. You're now taking the time to make a decision, no matter what that decision is, but because you want it that way. And so especially with social media, there's so much mindlessness where
Yeah.
you're buying this or oh this product, and oh maybe it'll help, right? And it's becoming automated,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that does have consequences in terms of how we view ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, right? So the Body Project is really positive. In the beginning, it can be a little depressing that you become aware of
Mm-hmm.
all the pressures that you're feeling. But then right after that, we work on how are we going to combat these pressures? How are we going to promote positive messages with each other and with ourselves? How are we going to be kinder to ourselves? And so then really becomes this great kumbaya experience, very meaningful. And the best part is no matter where you're at, right? We just work on one step further along to who you want to be. And it's all through dialogue. There's no lecture, there's no nothing. It's all through, we just ask questions and they dialogue. And that program was developed by Eric Stice. And I've been running it since 2006.
Oh, wow.
And then the second part that I developed at Arizona State was a leadership training model. If you think about peer leaders in a group, they're getting the group from point A to point B. They're having to facilitate this dialogue. They're having to deal with challenges to their authority. They're having to do with a lot of group dynamics and things like that. They're essential skills for any career in terms of group management, leadership, etc. We developed a training where we take undergrad students. It's 16 hours of training, but where they practice this and they really learn to implement it and they love it. And we then developed a course out of it, and it was called the Social Change Leadership Training Model. And because what we found is when we train peer leaders in this body project, which is really about just body image, they actually can now take any peer education program and implement it for the university. They're really well trained. And they become more activists in the college community. And they'll do little things that really improve the social climate of the college community. And so that's the second part of it. Now, the Body Project, it's been around for so long, over 150 publications. We know it well. I then got funding from Dove, which is the soap brand, Dove.
Mm-hmm.
They have their philanthropic foundation is focused on self-esteem and building confidence, first in women and young girls, and now just in general, building confidence in people. And so they funded us to actually develop for starting as early as fourth grade. So taking kind of what we know about the Body Project and what we know works and developmentally developing it for any teacher, any social group organization like YMCA, Boys and Girls Club can take this curriculum. So we have 10 lessons that are available for free. And that was the nice thing about working with Dove. They said everything that we developed and tested, they would offer for free to anybody to use. So these are all available for free. And then we also have, they developed these with a collaboration with Cartoon Network, these very short cartoon clips related to kind of the concepts. There's a virtual family trip that you can take. And then we developed family activities as well that go with this package. So there's a curriculum available for fourth and fifth grade. There's a curriculum for the middle school years. And we also developed some additional lessons. The nice thing too about that curriculum is we also developed stuff related specifically to appearance-based bullying and teasing.
Mm,
In the United States, most schools have anti-bullying and teasing curriculum, but they don't address appearance-related bullying and
right.
which is really common.
Yeah.
And so we added some modules that they can add to their bullying and teasing curriculum. So something else I want to highlight about this line of work that I'm really proud of is, so right now, Amazing Me and the Confident Me curriculum, we've done randomized controlled trials. Our randomized controlled trial actually was nationwide. Over 7,000 kids participated
Wow.
and received the curriculum and really amazing feedback and even teachers talked about some of the secondary benefits. It not only helped the classroom environment, but it also helped in terms of them and their relationship because they get comments from kids all the time about their own appearance. And so they were
Yeah.
able to implement things that made them feel better about it. And they also talked about how there up to this point there wasn't any material that they had received to address these issues, but they're really common. And we start to see them emerge fourth grade, but they really hit hard at the middle school years. And so we were happy in terms of prevention that we were able to provide these materials. And they're available to anybody to use. And the family activities, we hear a lot from parents. I see my child now starting to have some insecurities about their body. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to address it. What do I do? What do I not do? How much do I emphasize, not emphasize? And so those
Right.
family activities were also to help in that regard too, to address some of that. And they're available up there for free too. The other thing I want to say about the Body Project that I think is another really awesome thing that we did is as part of the Body Project, we have individuals write letters to their younger selves. If I
Oh.
knew then what I know now,
Mm-hmm.
here's what I would do differently. And those are powerful. The other thing that we do though is after they write those is say, okay, can you write a letter to a younger person?
Mm,
Think about high school if you're in college, right? Write a letter to a high schooler about what the messages you've learned here through this program and what you want to communicate to them. And then what we do is we actually will read through them, make sure they're appropriate, but we will actually make photocopies and deliver those letters to local high schools.
oh.
And we've delivered over 15,000 letters to local high schools. And we usually say a little bit about the program, what these are, and then we give it to them, to the principals, and say, it's a gift. Do what you want with them. And it's been cool also to see how principals have used those letters in very different ways to really improve the body confidence of their students. And so, yeah, so I think so. It's a really, when I say it's a feel good, passion project, it really is at so many levels. And it's a gift that we try to develop in a way that just keeps giving. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so wonderful, especially to hear about the perspective of the teachers. You don't really take into consideration that how many people it affects. I mean, it goes with students, but not only peer to peer, families, teachers, and even administrations. I know a lot of schools they have guidance counselors in places for this, and that's typically where the teachers will kind of tell the student to go see. But, handling that as a teacher and, even the occasional comments from students as a teacher, Those are very valid points. So we're going to move back a little bit towards more of your leadership and more of your administration work. We know that you have served as an associate dean and associate vice provost at Arizona State, and now you are the dean of the graduate school here. What has excited you the most about shaping graduate education?
I think one of the things that excites me the most is the time.
Mm,
I think I've come at a great time at ODU in terms of that there's really this forward focus vision. There's all of these incorporation of technological tools to advance education. And so we really are at a time where we can really shape and pivot things in very meaningful and impactful ways. Uh,
hmm.
the other thing I think that I'm really excited about coming here to ODU is just the people.
Oh, yeah?
You can change policies, you can change practices, you can remove barriers, but it's a harder task to change values.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really was clear and overwhelming when I interviewed here at ODU was just how everybody's student centered, the values that everybody had, about getting more people who want graduate education, access to graduate education, and really thinking differently about who makes up graduate education. And how do we get there? And then thinking about, our society is so much more global than it ever was,
Hmm.
or global jobs where you don't even have to move, right?
Yeah.
And so we have individuals that are not moving anywhere but are employed by a different country, and we have that's bigger, that's more, and how do we train students in that? So I think the landscape has also evolved in a way that's exciting for me to think about how do we train students better for that evolution that's occurred, and for tomorrow, and to be successful. And so I think it was that combination of the vision, the time point, the people, right, that really, really excited me to join here, and continues to excite me to be here.
So, on top of all of these different experiences you've had between, body positivity projects, the different places you've worked at all across that little southwestern area, um, have you faced any cultural challenges while you've been working on international projects? And if so, how did you navigate those?
Yeah, I think there are some constant challenges in terms of for international projects. And it's no matter if it's a research project, because I've had a lot of international collaborations in terms of research, but also in terms of the graduate education space.
Mm-hmm.
And those systemic issues are, they're often very different cultures, very different systems, policies, views of graduate education that you kind of have to marry together
Mm-hmm.
in order to kind of advance cultural exchanges, international exchanges where students of ours are going to and having education experiences at other universities and vice versa, or
Mm-hmm.
obtaining graduate degrees at other universities and vice versa. And so I think so there's those levels of issues that I think they're always there. The nature, the details might differ over time, and that context, but that's always kind of the constant. And then there are the specific international challenges that we have to face. And in global education and higher education is always subject to geopolitical forces,
Mm-hmm.
economic forces, climate forces. Sometimes, like there's all these other forces that play a role in it. And so you're kind of always having to shift and adapt
Mm-hmm.
depending on the context that's going on in the world. And so, I mean, there's always a lot going on in the world. So that means
Yeah.
always constantly shifting and adapting to better serve students. And so I think those are some of the cultural challenges I think that we face. Some of the things that I'm working on now that's also is like how do we better for students that come are admitted to ODU, how do we better transition them, onboard them, be there for them? What are the constant questions that they ask that we can then set things up systemically so that right when they ask them, oh, here it is, there's the answer, right? In a very easy, accessible, understandable way. How do we leverage AI to
Yeah,
better
that's a big
engage
thing.
them and better, transition them? And then how do we also have that person available to, because there's still that connection that sometimes that no tool, no technology, no process can replace. And so, so those are some of the, I think, bigger picture projects that we're working on is how do we help them transition to ODU and to the Monarch family quicker, better, easier, better meet their needs. Yeah.
Yeah, shifting and adapting, that's a very important aspect of dealing with these types of challenges. We know that you've also personally given academic lectures in Spanish and you've traveled widely to collaborate internationally.
Mhm.
What have these experiences taught you personally about working across cultures?
Oh my goodness, I love it. And I love it because it's a great time for me to be a student.
Mm,
And to learn about what are the things they're doing, what are the practices they're doing, what are the initiatives they have going on. But I also love it because some of the issues that we are dealing with, like this idea of that we're all now more global market than ever
hmm
before, right? That's something that every university in every country is dealing with. And so that's a way for me to connect and see how are they thinking about it? Because then that informs, some of the things we may do here. Or at least it's validating, we can commiserate together, right? And again, it's another node to node connection, even though
hmm
it's a further distance away. And so I love when we do these recruitment and relationship building trips with our global partners or potential global partners, because I do feel like I always come back with new ideas and potentially new partnerships to that our students can leverage. And that's at the end of the day, we're looking for, better opportunities, better global and international opportunities for our graduate students. And they can be virtual. And that idea is new. Developing a virtual global opportunity for a student. And so what does that look like? And how can we develop it in a meaningful way for everybody involved? I really enjoy, and as a student and professional in psychology, right, getting to learn other people and their cultures
Yeah.
is always fun too. So it's natural. Yes.
Yeah, when I had Dr. Orlando Ayala and graduate student Jonas Benza, they both mentioned that regardless of what they saw here in America and what they have seen in their own like countries of doing research or origin, the issues are the same. And people don't really recognize that the issues are the same. And the beauty about that is that people sometimes deal with those issues differently. And when you come together and see how each country deals with the same issue in a different way, you can kind of cross paths there and you guys can both benefit from learning from each other's experiences.
And the other thing too that I really enjoy is in these cultural learning exchanges is that it's impossible for a university to offer everything.
hmm
And we don't have to, but with good partnerships, right, the menu of things we can offer to students in terms of experiences and courses right now grows substantially. And so it's a great way to also just offer, and the more individuals we have in our classes that come from different experiences, the more fun the learning is. And
Yeah.
students tell us that all the time, right? And so finding more ways to develop that out, I think, is a fun part of my job and one that I enjoy. Yeah.
I love that. That's so amazing to hear about. So, what advice would you give to students who want to pursue these international programs and opportunities in research, but they might feel a little bit intimidated about it?
I would say the first thing is to reach out to our Office of International Collaborations about the opportunities. I think one of the barriers I hear a lot from students is concerns about the finances.
hmm
And so we can problem solve all that. With time, we can find solutions to most of the problems to allow you to have that experience. And sometimes that means creativity, like maybe it's a virtual experience, right? But or maybe it's a 2 week experience in with one of our partners. It depends on what the need is. We can also help students to figure out how do I build this into my portfolio when I go on the market, on the job market, if that's what they intend to do. We also have a lot of graduate students that aren't necessarily in graduate school for job placement.
Hmm.
They might be for a skill enhancement or, up the leadership ladder in their current employment, or they're here because they want to learn, they love to learn, right? And so depending on their diverse needs, exactly, how can we set up this experience to meet that need? And how that looks could be very different, and how that is set up could be very different, and what that costs can vary substantially and be very affordable. So I would say the first important thing, if you have an inkling, reach out. We can give you the basic information. We can start to plan it with you, right? And then implement and make it happen.
Definitely, definitely. Alrighty, so we're going to start wrapping up our conversation now. But I did want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
What is your vision for the future of graduate education? Are there any things that you're looking forward to or like collaborations you're excited about?
Yes, so really our vision is to really take graduate education to that next 21st century level. Design graduate programs that really meet this need of the market, be it domestic or global. Better train our students, better prepare our students, but also activate our alumni network so that when those students are moving on, that they fall into this network that they can benefit from, that they can socially connect with, right? So that it's lifelong. You're part of the Monarch family for life,
Hmm.
and it will give to you in many ways, right? And there are ways that you can then give in return, which is being a mentor, talking to a grad student, or I mean, there's so many ways that they can then give back. In so again, going back to that collectivism, that family, right, and how I think about it and operate. And so yeah, so I think my vision is an enhanced graduate education, increase what we can offer, increase how we serve those, and be industry partners that hire our graduates, being the local community. Graduate education really is an economic engine for the region and for the state. And so how are we meeting the workforce needs of the state? What is it that they need? We'll develop programs to really satisfy that need, and to benefit the state as well, and then also domestically and globally.
Definitely. Well, we are at the end of the podcast episode. Let's give one more round of applause for Dr. Perez.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today. It was wonderful to hear about your experiences and what have shaped you into the person you are and the wonderful things that you have done. You've done so many things, it seems, and I just can't wait to see where it gets you now here at ODU. We're so great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lena. This has been a pleasure, and you're awesome to work with. So thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you and all this work that you do.
Thank you.